Hey guys, welcome to Ceasefire. I'm Caleb,
I'm John.
and this is our top 10 armies of August. Just so you guys know, this is scored by all games played, not just the top games. We are, and the way we rank these is by real win percentage, which is the number of games won that aren't mirror matches. Points scored on average per game, and then GT placements. And then our tiebreaker for this is the number of people playing games. So just so you guys know how we're going to end up ranking these armies ourselves.
Yep. And then we are going to start with our honorable mentions who didn't quite make it to our list. We have Chaos Knights, Chaos Space Marines, and Black Templars. They're rather close to getting in that 10th position, whether that be because of its win percentage or some Chaos Space Marines had a decent amount of GT top 4 placements.
I say they had a number one placement, they had a number two placement, and a number four placement.
Yep.
Um,
And then Chaos Knights are just scoring 50 points or more, a little around 50 points each game. And I think that's what kind of carried them to that position.
yeah, and their win percentage isn't terrible. Chaos Space Marines and Chaos Knights both sitting around 47% real win percentage, so not a number to scoff at by any means.
Yeah.
But just not quite enough to make it up into this top 10. So,
Let's get to number 10.
yep, Tyranids breaking out into the number 10 spot. I think surprisingly with how well, because they have a GT placement of number they have a number one GT placement, they have a number two GT placement, they have two GT3s and a GT4. They place well, they score well at an average of 50.5 points per game, but their win percentages isn't the best, especially with what we see into this top 10 list, which you guys are going to see at 48%.
Yep. That
Not the greatest.
that might be just the amount of players, right? So they might be a little bit harder to maneuver or maybe list build for.
Correct. They might just be just a bit more challenging of an army to play. The number of games played for them is 4,378. So there's quite a few people who are playing Tyranids, which isn't surprising with the new box that came out is Tyranids versus Space Marines.
And
So
that's just in
Tyranids.
August and what we can see that has been recorded. There could be different games out there, so other factions could be seeing more love. To be honest with you, but this does count, not just competitive games, I believe.
No, this it's
It's any recorded game.
only. I think it's only GT and up games, but it's not just top placing GT games.
Oh, okay, so it's GT and up games.
So it's
I
any
thought it
any
might have
game that's
been
played in a GT, but it's
okay.
not just like the top armies that are doing really well at all these GTs. This is the everyone who played in the GT, and some of these armies could have people that played round one, lost, and decided just to not play anymore in that GT. So that's very much that can skew these numbers just a bit. It's just the numbers we have access to.
Yes.
So rounding up to number 9, which is a surprise to me, is World Eaters. They have no GT placements.
No, but you know what is good for them? Their win percentage. They're coming in at a strong 51% win
No,
percentage.
52.
So sorry, are we rounding? Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yep,
52%. If you round up, it's 53. Uh,
correct.
and yeah, that actually is pretty good. I would say right now, being in a 52% win rate. They do take a dip in numbers because they are more of a specific chaos faction. I'm assuming since they broke off, they have less people playing them now. Uh, but I mean, it's hard to complain when you can go to a table and 50% of the time you might win.
Yeah, and especially with, I think this speaks to the army in general. You don't have a lot of the other phases that most armies do. Like you don't have a very strong shooting phase. You're just built around movement in that fight phase. And with it being simplified down, I'm sure some people are going to argue this. I think the army is just easier to play, but harder to do really, really well with because you don't have the aspects of everything else.
Yeah, you may have things that are good for you, but I don't think melee armies as a whole are doing well in the competitive scene. So like, they might be doing fine in tournaments where they're what 3-2 or like 3-3 type thing, but I think that's what's making them hold at that 52%, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's really that win percentage is really those lower end games that people can come in and just pub stomp. but they're not. Once you actually verse an opponent that has, the full tricks in their bag, and or you just play against Eldari who have everything, you kind of just are gonna get shit on, and it is what it is with that. And hopefully with the balance change that's coming out this week, that will be addressed in a lot of this.
Yeah. So we'll go on to number 8, Chaos Demons.
Now this is an army true to my heart that can do everything and anything. It shows with their 51% win rate that they are very good. Most people are you can pilot them really well. They have good placements. They haven't won any GTs, but they've got some second, third, and fourth placements. Speaking to them, but they're also a very small faction. Like there wasn't that many games there. I think they're close to one of the smallest factions that we have in our top 10 list.
Yeah, and they've scored an average of 52 points a game. So, you're scoring not bad. I'd say anything over 50 is always a win, in any book.
Especially with how low scoring a lot of the missions are now. 50 points is pretty solid for an average. Mm-hmm. That is an average score of all of these games played. 52 points is pretty insane. So and actually, I think they have the highest in our top 10 of average points scored.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
I believe they do. That's actually kind of surprising.
It's not for me because I think demons play the primary objective so well.
I wonder if it's a specific type of demon list as well. Well, we'll have to dive into lists maybe when we hit them in our faction breakdown.
Yep. So on to number 7 is Thousand Suns. Now, I think this is an army that takes so much skill to play, and the only reason they're up here is because of their GT placements.
I disagree as playing against them.
With a win rate of only 48%, now 49% if you round up, is nothing to scoff at, but that's where GW kind of wants their win percentage, sitting around 45 to 50%. 45 to 50% is their nice soft zone. With them being in that, but still being able to take home 2 first places, 3 second places, 3 third places, and 2 fourths, they're scoring well. So I guess maybe they're not the hardest army to play by any means, but they have a lot of tricks in their book.
They have a lot of. This is where the player count is starting to step up at, right? They have a decent amount of games, and I think that's what's dragging down their win percentage. So whether it be multiple Thousand Suns, or I guess win percentage doesn't count for that. But for whether it be multiple Thousand Suns in the same tournament, not being able to rank up higher, or because you're just stomping them in the points and whatnot, I don't know. Their bolters having AP is fucking crazy.
Yeah, but as you can see though, their average point scored a game is only 47.
I know. I saw that, and I was like, oh.
It's not high.
How do you win a GT like that?
Even, I think the lowest points scored on average is 43 points. Surprisingly, that's by Space Marines.
Yeah.
So just for you guys to be able to see what most scores are sitting from 40 to 50 points for the average score per game. So a 47 is, yes, towards the top end of that, but it's not really breaking out like a lot of these top armies are going to.
Yep. All right, moving on to number 6.
One of my favorites, Orcs. A higher win percentage than I thought they'd ever have. But I guess smacking people really hard is still really good.
It is.
Yep, so 52% win rate. They're being represented out there 2,800 players, 2,800 games, not players, 2,800 games played in GTs. Their scoring is also not the greatest, but
yep.
It's actually I'm not going to say it's not great. It's pretty good at 49 points average. Okay, I guess that's pretty good.
It is.
I guess that is pretty good. I probably should say that 45. If you're scoring below 45 points, it's probably not that great.
Yeah, I feel like the sweet zone is around 40. 46? I would say that's like the sweet zone. You're probably about
46
average.
to 50 is pretty. 46 probably 48 is probably average.
Yeah.
but they are taking home a first place GT win, 2 second place GT wins, and a single third and fourth GT. So they're placing well. I'm fairly sure most of the lists are just out there running so many trucks it's not even funny, because 50-point trucks is insane.
And so this is where Thousand Suns were doing better in the GTs, but their overall win percentage, this is where I think that player base, you're going to find a worse Thousand Suns player than you would an Orcs. Because their player base is a little smaller.
There's 500 more games of Thousand Suns than there are of Orcs.
Yeah.
And so that, yeah, it can make a pretty big difference, especially when, people, I feel like there's a bigger draw towards, well, actually, I guess for me, I think there's a bigger draw towards Orcs for most players, but I think a lot of people look at Orcs and just go, they're kind of clunky, like, looking, especially. Thousand Suns look a bit sleeker as an army, and especially they look more fun to play, I think, even though I hate Thousand Suns. That's Mason's stuff, not mine.
Yeah.
But so it's surprising to see like the game counts and stuff like that. Or I guess it also can be certain people probably think some armies are going to do better than others, and there are people out there that look at just the top GT placements and stuff like that and go, "Oh, they're doing well. I can pilot them just as well." And you're not gonna.
It depends on the army, right? Well, right. That's why we were doing the breakdown the way we think it is. So like,
yeah,
you can come across the average, Eldari player and still get stomped. And where if you come across like the average World Eater player, they like might be better at their army. It just seems like, or at least what we're seeing in the numbers for World Eaters right now, right? So like Orcs right now are just, I would say you are more hardcore Orc players are out there than maybe Thousand Suns, right?
Probably. That's probably a good way to look at it. And then we can go on to an army that everyone likes playing, and that's the Necrons. I think this is the favorite Xenos faction. I'm fairly sure.
This is the favorite faction of the month.
It is the highest number of games played, surprisingly, and not by a small margin either.
And I think this is where our tiebreaker happened, and they beat out the Orcs because of this. Like, I also see the GTs are up in this one, but their real win percentage is only 49%, which is lower than the Orcs. But their GTs and the amount of people you're seeing, I mean, I think that's where you're going to find a bunch of them. It's an easy army to pilot, but, I mean...
5,800 games played.
If you're good.
The Necrons. And yeah, if you're good, you're good. And I think the Necrons have shown, and especially in like some of our battle reports and stuff like that, they're a strong army to contend against. And it shows with the three first place GT wins.
Yep.
2 seconds and then a single third and fourth. Like, they place well. Now, I also think that when you have this many games played, you're eventually going to get some good results out of it, just with luck.
Very true.
But with this many, I think this is branching outside of that luck. I think Necrons are just a really good play, like a really good faction. I think they're a really good beginner faction too. I don't think the rules are too complicated and stuff like that.
They're not too expensive to get into as well. As long as you know what you're trying to buy, always look up the best value packs that you can find. Because trust me, if you're buying Necron Warriors in the straight box, you're doing it wrong.
Yep. I think they're just a really good beginner faction. It shows with how many people are actually playing them. I also think, Robot Hype, a lot of people like them. So, we can move on to a very little played faction. Never mind.
No, that's the wrong one.
This one also is a very highly played faction. That's the Adeptus Custodies.
Yep, and I think their win percentage is what's speaking for them here. They only have 3 GTs, all in the fourth placement.
Yep,
go ahead.
They're surprisingly though, even with yes, they're still placing in GTs, because a top 4 placement is nothing to scoff at for an army. But a 55% win rate is insane.
Yep, with points scored at average of 51, you're creaming people. You see a Custodies player, they're good. If the army is good, they might not be good, but if they are good, be fearful. Yeah,
and Adeptus Custodies too, like, they're an easier army to wrap your head around because there's so little units, but they have so much room to master that when you do find a good player, they're a good player.
Yep. This kind of comes to like the World Eaters, where they're a very melee-oriented army, but when you figure out the right units for your shooty pieces and just learn how to do your charges right, you'll be up there in the like GT fourth placement, or maybe you'll be at least up there in the top 10.
Yep, and then also with them too is like the fact that custodies do have that shooting element to their army, and they do it well because they have no problems going up against the Space Marines and stuff like that. The 2 damage a lot of their ranged weapons have is really good.
Yep.
So we can move on to that number 3. This is the lesser played faction that I was talking about, and that's Genestealer Cult. I feel like this is a very niche army that is doing insanely well for what they are, and not for just what they are. Like they're an actually good army, but they are hard to pilot. Like this is not an easy army to just sit back and be able to play.
Not only are they hard to pilot, they're also an expensive army to buy. So like you got 2 factors, the reason why you don't see a lot of players.
Yeah. But this is one of our highest win rating factions when it comes to GT placements. At 6 first place placements, 2 second place, 2 third place, and 4 fourth place finishes. Now their win rate is also exceptionally high at 51.2. Like they are placing good and they are winning, and it's showing.
Out of our top 5, though, they're number 4 for their win rate. So like that's pretty low for the win rate.
Yeah,
out of the top 5.
Yeah, they are. They're in. Yeah, win rate percentage wise, they're not the highest in this top 10 by any means, but 51% still is nothing to scoff at. Like that's a good 50% of your games winning. I'd take that any day.
Yep, you're more likely to see a top player as well than you are not a top player, because the amount of games that are happening and the amount of their wins that you're seeing on the board. They're I would say if we excluded one of our armies out, if we excluded our number 1 placement out, they would be, I would say, the number 1 army to fear if I saw them, because if they're playing them, they probably know how to play them, or they don't. It's basically a coin flip at that point.
Yep, with only 2,000, just around 2,000 games played for Genestealer Cult. Yeah, any person that you fight that play up against that is playing the army, is most likely to actually know what they're doing and know how to do everything their army needs to.
Or they don't, and they're part of that, the reason why it's only at 51%. Right?
Yeah. Yep. So our number 2, Imperial Knights. Now, I do think this number is still skewed because of towering.
Yeah.
I don't know if Knights are actually good, but if it was just because of towering, though, you would also have Chaos Knights up here, and they're not.
No, yeah. I think you get some rerolls in there, and this is after the FAQ, right? So all of this is just in August. So this is full effect of you're not going to be doing too much like shooting and like rerolling everything, but you'll at least get some rerolls in there. And just the towering, Imperial Knights have always shot better, and that's what towering is good for. It's not good for melee, where Chaos Knights are. Mason may argue with me, but Chaos Knights are way less shooty than Imperial Knights.
I'd agree. And then the representation of Imperial Knights to Chaos Knights too. There's 1,000 more games played for Imperial Knights than Chaos Knights.
Yep.
And I think that's a lot of games. Like that's a surprisingly amount. The difference between them, and
coming out with 2. Go ahead. 2 GT wins and 4 second places and 2 third and 1 fourth. They're not doing too bad. I mean, towering is there. It's going to carry.
They have one of the higher win percentages too at 54% win rate. That's also really good.
It is.
Now their points scored is also up in those points too. They average almost 50 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty substantial, like, they're well rounded for how well they do, and their player base the number of games is also still pretty high. So with them having a higher number of games and everything still being this well-rounded, like that's a pretty good army. Like that's there's a reason it landed in that number 2 slot. And I think we all know who the number 1 slot is. I don't know who
Boo.
wouldn't guess it, but
Boo.
yeah, it's Eldari. Hopefully with the coming nerf, uh, these guys get toned down quite a bit, because when I tell you their GT standings, guys, and I'm not making this up. This is ridiculous. They have 19 first place GTs, 12 second places, 10 thirds, and 12 fourth place finishes.
There were entire GTs that all top 4 were just Eldari.
Yep.
That's how gross it was.
There was a GT that I was looking at that out of their top 10 finishers, 8 were Eldari.
Oh, no.
And it's not surprising. You're going to see a lot of them. They almost have 5,000 games played.
If you don't
just
see
the month of August.
Yeah, if you're not seeing a lot of them, you're seeing the same player at every event because they know they're about to win.
And then their win percentage is 62%.
If you round up. But
yes, if you're rounding up, 62% win rate is insane. And they're also, not surprising with the high win percentage and the high GT placements, their average scoring too, even with almost 5,000 games, is 52 points a game.
Which is our highest scoring out there.
Second highest. Chaos Demons is the highest.
Oh, is it really?
Yep.
Oh, just
barely. They eked above them by like 0.6. Yeah. 0.6 points. So, yeah, they are. But the difference though between Chaos Demons points wise and Eldari points wise, there are 3,000 more games of Eldari.
Yep.
To bring down the points scored, and it didn't. That's telling you how strong that army is.
Those people who take those fluff lists and still come out, with 3 wins, 2 losses.
Yep. And so I think there was 36 GTs played this month. 19 of those going to first place Eldari. Over half of the GTs played this month, Eldari have won.
Yeah.
I want that to sink in. That's nuts. And I can't wait for this to go away.
Yeah, it's about to. I feel you're probably looking at points costs. You're looking at, they already hit their rules a little bit, right, with the Fate dice. You might see other rules hit, depending on what they're feeling like, if something is still that busted. But I'm assuming their points costs are about to go through the roof.
I hope they do some more than just point cost adjustments to them. I think rules need to be balanced. Now, I do want to mention the worst army on our list is Adeptus Mechanicus, and it's for a good reason. Somehow they managed to place 3rd at a GT.
Yeah.
I don't know who got lucky with that, but good on you.
Very skilled.
They have not the lowest, the second lowest. The lowest representation is Leagues of Otan at 793. Adeptus Mechanicus have only 811 games played. The win rate for those games is 32%.
Yep.
That is sad.
I thought Leagues of Otan were in a bad spot, but people who are playing them now are at least decent at them.
Yeah, Adeptus Mechanicus is really struggling out there, and I just thought I'd let you guys know, if you're looking to get into the game, and for some reason this is the podcast you came to listen for that, don't maybe steer away from Adeptus Mechanicus. They're really hard to play, first off, and then second off, the rules suck.
If you're going to go for competitive, always buy if you like the playstyle and you also enjoy the models, right?
I would say the biggest part should be rule of cool. You buy the things you think look awesome. Yep. There's a reason half of my stuff is like just I have random things.
Yep, and your army will always have a time it'll be shelved and a time it won't be shelved. But if you're trying to get into the competitive scene, now is not the time to be building those Adeptus Mechanicus lists.
Correct. They are not good. And hopefully a lot of this changes. We'll be bringing, like I said, we're going to be bringing you this every month that we can. I want to have a top 10 list just so you guys can be updated on what's really good, what's not. But it is sad to say that Eldari do reign supreme still. Hopefully not for long. Hopefully they get toned back, and maybe Adeptus Mechanicus can get pushed back up, and we can see more of a balanced game again.
Yeah,
Because
I
it's
would
not really
personally
balanced.
love to see everybody between a 55 and like a 45%, right? That's where
Yep.
I would love to see most armies. So that way nothing feels impossible to win against.
In a perfect world, everything would be at a 50% win rate.
You're right, but I don't think it'll ever be a perfect world. So I'll
No.
accept 55 to 45, right?
Yep. A 10% spread would be pretty acceptable, and I think everyone could feel pretty happy about that. And then when we get to a balanced slate like that, then we can actually go into and tell you why people are actually winning these GTs and what they're doing different that's making like things stand out.
Yep, we
But
were thinking about doing other things where we might go into lists and start adding those like the reasons why to our reasons why on the top 10.
yep. So this was our top 10. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you can see our reasonings behind why we did all this stuff. So thanks for listening, guys. Have a good one.